My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Mike Carlin hosts a great podcast called Uncorking a Story. Mike, tell us what these fine folks will get when they listen.
Uncorking a Story profiles successful writers and authors to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. And it all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin?
Ooh, interesting. Where can people subscribe?
You can follow the show at uncorkingstory.com, at marketingpodcast.net, or by searching for Uncorking a Story wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard him. Go subscribe.
Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why someone should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At WordWrite, we call it your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your organization do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable results. In this episode, we're honored to have Gini Dietrich with us. Gini is the founder, CEO, and author of Spin Sucks, the host of the Spin Sucks podcast, and the author of Spin Sucks, the book. Are you getting a theme here? She's also the creator of the PESO model, not the Mexican currency. I often find myself saying that to clients and prospects, Jenny, but that's okay. She's crafted a certification for it in partnership with USC Annenberg, PRA. We're going to talk about that for sure in this episode. Gini has also run and grown an agency for the past 19 years. For those of you who are going to be able to watch this on video, she does not look old enough to have done that. She started maybe in grade school. She's also co-author of Marketing in the Round, co-host of Inside PR with Chip Griffin, and co-host of the Agency Leadership Podcast. Gini, welcome to Storylines Live.
It's so nice to see you. I mean, I got to see you in person a few weeks ago, but this is second best.
This is awesome. It's good to see you again. I'll put it that way. Is there anything about your background from the bio I just read, thank you very much for sharing that I neglected to mention that you think our audience would benefit from knowing about you?
No, I think you covered it. I'm a cyclist. That's about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Oh, yeah. I love to ride my bike.
What kind of a cyclist? In your house cyclist? Distance?
No, well, I live in Chicago, so part of the time, yes, I'm in the house. But yeah, during the winter, can't go outside. It's very cold. But yeah, during the spring and summer, I'm definitely outside on my road bike.
That's great. That's awesome. One of my neighbors is an extreme mountain biker. And
really?
Showed up the other day. He was in rural Pennsylvania. Folks, if you don't know it, I'm in Pittsburgh. Jenny's in Chicago. And he was biking up somewhere in a race in northern Pennsylvania. And he fell and he broke his arm in 3 places. It was 2 hours to the nearest hospital.
No.
Yeah, and it was not Chicago Med, if you catch my drift.
Yes, I'm sure it was not. Oh, that's terrible. Is he okay? Other than
Yeah,
that,
he's okay. He'll
okay.
be all right. He's young and
And
healthy.
the best part is he'll get back out on his bike and go again.
He's already been back on his
I'm
bike.
sure.
A little more
Probably with
difficult
his
too.
arm in a cast, probably.
That is exactly right. How did you know that? Are you a cyclist?
Maybe.
Jenny, one of the reasons why I so much wanted to have you on the podcast, not the only reason for sure, but a major reason is because you are a very accomplished podcast host and guest yourself. Could you please share with the audience a little bit about your podcast?
Oh, sure. It's the Spin Sucks podcast itself. So I have been the co-host of Inside PR with Joe Thornley and Martin Waxman for years. Chip Griffin and I launched the Agency Leadership Podcast.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And my team came to me and said, "It's great you're doing all of this, but can we have our own podcast?" And I was like, "Ugh, I don't want to have to go and get guests and do the scheduling and figure out the content and questions. And that's just not something that I want to make a priority or make time for." And they said, "Well, guess what? We can repurpose content you already create into a podcast." And I was like, "Oh, okay, keep talking." So they talked me into doing that. And in the beginning, that's what we did, is we repurpose content. And now I actually use the podcast as the jumping off point for the rest of our content. So I do the podcast first, and try to do really like timely, newsworthy things that are happening in the moment, and then use that as the jumping off point for the blog, for the LinkedIn newsletter, for our social media, and all of that.
That's awesome. Folks are going to get a lot of marketing and PR knowledge bombs here today. Remarketing and reusing your content is the first, but probably far from the last.
Yes.
We always ask guests on Storylines Live for their most important aspect of what we call this capital S story. So for you and your journey with Spin Sucks right now, what's most important to you? The story that you tell for people to buy from you, work with you, invest in you, or partner with you?
I would say, I've been on this PESO model journey for about 10 years. And in the beginning, it was very much about how do we prove that the work that a communicator does affects the business in a positive way, right? Because so much of what we do cannot be directly correlated to sales, which is what an executive wants, right? And I do too. As a business owner, I want to know if
Don't
I'm
we all?
investing my time, right?
We want results.
Yeah, we want to see the results, and we want to know that if I'm spending $5,000 a month or $25,000 a month or whatever it happens to be, that it's resulting in something. And so trying to figure that piece of it out with what we do, because so much of what we do is about brand awareness and trust and credibility and authority. And those things are really hard. They're not tangible. They're really hard to measure. If you have it, and if you don't, but like you can't say, well, gosh, it helped us increase our revenue by X% last year, right?
It doesn't fit on a spreadsheet real
At
neat.
all. And it's challenging because because of that, because it doesn't fit on a spreadsheet, a CFO during a down year will say, well, this is an expensive line item, let's just cut it. And they just, so, as you know, when you run an agency, it's so challenging during down economies and down markets, presidential election years, that, that's always the first thing to go. So as I started the journey, it was really to figure out, how do we measure the work that we do so that we can show that we are an investment, not an expense. And so that we can show that, if you cut us entirely, it's going to hurt you. And here's why. It's easy for marketing to do that. It's easy for advertising to do that. It's really challenging for us. And so I continue to look at the PESO model and how we integrate all of the media types, paid, earned, shared, and owned, so that it is measurable in a way that our marketing brethren can do, right? So we can track news articles, we can track content, we can track social media, we can do those things. And so that's really been the capital S, I think, story throughout the thing. Is it's really about doing the work that we do really well we're storytellers, we're relationship builders, but doing it in a way that we can also measure it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And we definitely want to dig more into the PESO model in a few minutes. Obviously, We started our podcast because we have a take on storytelling, and I wrote this book. And thank you for having my book behind you. I love that. That's great. Um, but as you just mentioned, we are all storytellers in this business. And I always like to ask our guests, what's your definition of storytelling? Where does storytelling fit into your theology or understanding of what we do on a daily basis?
It's such a good question because I think it's really hard for people to understand what storytelling is in the business setting, right? Like we all have this image of sitting around a campfire and telling ghost stories. Uh,
Right.
Apparently now in today's age, kids use the flashlight on their phone instead of a flashlight. I just learned this the other
Aw.
night. um, but that's the image that we have. And so I think it's really hard for people to understand that when we're telling stories around the business, it's not necessarily fictionalized and
Right.
it's not necessarily this long drawn out piece, but it's really bringing people into your culture, the way that you do things, your values, your morals, and even like personally, what sets you apart because of your personal values or your personal morals, whatever happens to be. But it's, if you think about it from the perspective of you're creating content that tells a story. And to do that, there are two things that matter: expertise and experience.
Yes.
Anyone can create content. Anyone can write a blog post about video marketing. Anybody can write a blog post about HR trends. Anyone can say, okay, these are the benefits that we provide to our organization. But when you add in the expertise and the experience that only your organization has, or only your thought leaders or subject matter experts have, then it becomes a story and it becomes valuable and unique to you. So rather than trying to say, okay, well, we've got to come up with characters and we have to have a narrative and we have to have a hero and we have to, like, you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. Can you do those things? For sure. But I would worry less about that and worry more about how do we introduce our experience and our expertise into the things that we're producing.
Wow, that's great insight, Jenny. Thanks for sharing that. I started out in this work world as a journalist, and when I was going to college at Miami of Ohio, I had a journalism professor in Journalism 101, John Lowry. And if any student in the class, hungover or not, dared to challenge him and say that not everybody had a story, he would send them out onto the quad and tell them not to come back until they had found some random person and gotten their story. And yeah,
No, really?
yes,
That's
really.
great. That's great.
His point was that we all have a
Yeah.
story. And,
Yeah.
your point is in business, let's not overthink it, right?
Right.
The reason why we have chosen to land most commonly, these aren't the only four questions, but the most common are, why would somebody buy for you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you? Is because those are the issues that come up most often in business.
Yep.
And you can have advertising, you can have a pretty logo, you can have a tall skyscraper or ginormous factory. But when person A says to person B, hey, what do you know about company X? Is that a place worth working? What are they going to say? And,
Right.
as PR professionals, that's the story that we work so hard to construct, the one that doesn't necessarily fit that well on the spreadsheet, right?
Right.
That's why in the show open of every episode, I say this is the story that defines the character and nature of an organization, because that's what people think about daily in the PR world. We're trying to say, okay, what kind of an organization, a company is this? Why would people want to associate with it, right?
Right.
I think that's just such a great way to look at it. So how does your personal story, Jenny, and you have a very interesting personal story, you can share as much or as little of it as you want, but how does your personal story inform what you do at Spin Sucks?
Hmm.
I'm making Gini Dietrich think. This is enjoyable for me because she's like one of these rapid fire experts. So,
You know, I really think it goes back to when we were kids. My mom would say two things to us. One was, remember who you are and what you stand for,
hmm,
which means you go out that door and remember you have ethics, you have morals, you have values, you stand for something and stand up for yourself, believe in those things. And the other thing was, if I hear from your teacher before you do, you're in bigger trouble. Which was true. Like, if you came home and said, I got in trouble at school today and here's why, it was far less than if the school called and said they got in trouble at school today. And I learned that lesson. My brother did not.
There's always one
Um,
in the family.
there always is. Yeah. The second born is the one. But I've taken that into my life, and it's something that I teach my kids as well. But it's like, when we were thinking about what to name the blog, and you chuckled a little bit when you read Spin Sucks over and over again, but we were thinking about it, and one of our interns at the time said, well, you always say that spin sucks because you believe that what we do is so ethical, and the perception out there is that we're spin doctors or liars, right? And that's not
Yes.
it's not true. In Hollywood it might be true, in politics in Washington D.C. it might be true in some cases, but for the most part, most of us, we abide by a code of ethics. We are very honest people. We don't try to trick people or anything like that. And so I've brought that thread all the way through, and it's the ethics piece of it. It's the, we are honest, we're truthful, we're transparent. Do we make mistakes? For sure. Are we above beyond reproach? Not all the time, but it's the ethical piece of it, which is why I named it what we did.
Yeah, it's great because it's so true. People do think that what we do is spin, and they think it sucks. Every time I recommend Spin Sucks to somebody, it catches them up short. They're like, "What?
I'm sure.
What?"
Yeah.
Because it's like it's very clever. It's like you've told some kind of truth on yourself that you
Yeah.
actually haven't, right?
Yeah.
But you've
Right.
acknowledged the elephant in the room,
That's
which
right.
is what most people think about our business.
Yeah.
Well, Ginny, storytelling, of course, is fundamental to what we do, but it is also fundamental to the model that you've built, PESO. And we're going to dig into that in a minute, folks. We'll be right back after this message.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on Impian to help your business? Mike Carlin hosts a great podcast called Uncorking a Story. Mike, tell us what these fine folks will get when they listen.
Uncorking a Story profiles successful writers and authors to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. And it all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin?
Ooh, interesting. Where can people subscribe?
You can follow the show at uncorkingstory.com, at marketingpodcast.net, or by searching for Uncorking a Story wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard him. Go subscribe.
Folks, we're back with Gini Dietrich, the CEO of Spin Sucks, an inventor of one of my favorite acronyms in the world, PESO: paid, earned, shared, and owned. And we're going to really dig into that right now. At our firm, we often say that there are three things that an organization needs to do. First, it needs to uncover its story, then it needs to develop it, and then it needs to share it. And Ginny, to me, the PESO model is the best, and I would say the only way to really share your story once you know what that story is. Could you give our audience a sense of how PESO came to be?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that we were trying to figure out how to marry measurement with the work that we do. And you'll appreciate this. When I started my agency, it was very much media relations, crisis, reputation management, and events, right? And we were so good at media relations. We were so good. And I had really deep friendships with many journalists at the top tier publications, right? So and that's that I spent my career doing that. I spent my career building relationships so that when we brought on a client, it was not easy, but it was,
Natural evolution.
easier,
You're
right?
connecting people, right?
Yes.
That's what we do
Yeah,
in PR.
absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. Yes, connecting people. But the problem with that is that there were peaks and valleys. So you would have these peaks of stories because there was a product launch or a brand refresh or a new campaign or whatever happened to be, something newsworthy that would happen. So you'd have this peak of lots of stories and then a valley of nothing because you're working on the next campaign, or there wasn't anything to talk about, or whatever it happens to be. Well, when you run an agency, clients don't like to pay for the valleys.
Nope.
And so I had conversation after conversation after conversation after conversation with executives who were like, this was great, but when are you going to do this? And why didn't we get this? And gosh, I don't think we can keep paying you if we're not going to get the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. And like getting those, you're getting that once or twice in your entire lifetime of a company, not like every month. So I got really tired of having those conversations. And as that was happening, it was like this perfect storm. The Great Recession hit, and many of my friends who were journalists were furloughed and never came back to work. So all of those relationships went out the door.
Wow.
Twitter became a household name. Facebook became available for businesses. LinkedIn became launched. WordPress made it easier for us to create content without a web developer. Like all of this stuff happened at the same time. And so we started to look at it and to say, how can we fill those valleys? So it very much started with, all right, let's continue to do media relations or the earned media piece. But as part of that, we're going to marry it with owned media. And what we're going to do is that when a client is interviewed, we're going to pick up snippets and sound bites and things that don't make it to the story, photos, B-roll, things like that, that don't make it to the story. And we're going to create our own content using that. So it's like the behind the scenes, before and after kinds of things. And so we married the two. And then as social media became more applicable to business, then we started to use that to distribute that information. And then we used paid to sort of boost it out there and get it to new audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we had this model that was integrated and working together in a way that made things really consistent. So now, instead of having the "what have you done for me now lately" conversation, it was very much like, can we sign on for another year? And all of a sudden our client retention went through the roof and our churn was almost nothing, right? And it was because we figured out how to fill those valleys. And so now we look at it and we say, if I were to order the media types in order that I would do it for most businesses, it would actually be OSEP.
Yep.
OSEP. Yeah. So I would start with owned, use shared to distribute, use earned to gain credibility, and use paid to boost to get to new audiences. But OE, so you see, I have to think about it.
Yeah, it's so hard to remember that.
It's so hard to remember. So
It was easy, right?
yeah.
Yeah. That is, thank you for sharing that. That's a great explanation of the process. If I had a nickel, even a penny, for how many times a great piece of earned content has been seen only on social or only in some other forum,
Yeah.
I'd probably be doing a podcast on something else.
Right. Right.
Because it works. It works. This is the way the 21st century works. The chance that somebody's going to see a great article in, what's the Chicago Sun-Times or Tribune in print versus seeing it online, whether it's on the news organization's website or on their social,
Yep.
or
someone else's.
Yep. We do this all the time because a client not only wants to be in a great article, they want the people they're trying to reach through the news gatekeeper to take some action. They want to move hearts and minds and inspire some action. Well, a great LinkedIn post or Facebook post or some other social flavor, there you can put a link in. You can say, want to know more about this product, or want to talk to one of our experts.
Yep.
No news organization, speaking as a former journalist, is going to do that.
Right.
That's not the way the news business works.
Right.
And it's just the beauty of the model is so fantastic. But can you please share with the audience a little bit how it's evolved to the point now where you're going to be working with USC Annenberg? I mean, this is not just a four-letter acronym. It's a real process with a university certification.
Yeah. One of the things, so when you're an entrepreneur and you run a business, you tweak and you iterate. And as you know, it's like you go all over the place. There's no straight line, right?
Nope.
And unfortunately, and overnight success truly does take about 10 years. So one of the things that we tried is to get the certification out to the mass PR professional communicator. And what we discovered was that once you get about 5 to 8 years into your career, you're pretty stuck in how you do things, either because the way the organization does it, or because you just don't have the time to learn new tools. So even though we have new things coming at us all the time, artificial intelligence is the thing right now. There's the TikTok news anchor, like there's all this stuff coming at us. The majority of professionals don't have the time because of everything else going on to focus on something like that. And so what we said was, we learned that lesson and we said, okay, well, obviously we can't get the entire communications industry to be certified in this model yet. So what if we went into schools and taught it there, so that when somebody graduates and comes into the workforce, they already have that knowledge and foundation. And as they start to influence decisions and then make decisions, they say, but this is how we do things. So having a partnership with someone like USC, which is the #1 PR school in the country,
I 100% agree.
it helps to gain that credibility, I think, that we need. So anybody who graduates with a degree of PR, communications, advertising, and journalism, I believe, degree from USC will have the PESO Model certification. And we've done that with many universities. So we go in there and we teach it, and we teach the professors how to teach it, so that the kids can then graduate, and we create this groundswell movement of going up into the workforce.
But just to be clear, though, Ginny, PESO certification is not just for those in undergraduate or masters, right? If a mid-career professional
Absolutely. Yep.
can also,
Absolutely.
how would working professional access the certification?
Yeah, I mean, it's all on demand. We just updated all of the content in January. We're unfortunately going to have to update it again because things have changed so quickly, especially with AI this year.
I was going to say AI, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we included it in January, but it's
goes so fast,
so rapidly since January that we'll be updating it again this coming year. But yeah, it goes through all of it, gives you a nice overview of the PESO model. It goes through all the media types. It helps you craft a plan. It helps you develop all of the things that you need. And it helps you use AI, have AI help you do some of the more minutia kinds of things, like keyword research and questions that your customers would ask and things like that. The AI does all that for you. So we actually, I will say this, and then it will make me make sure it's launched in time, but we are launching a custom GPT around the PESO model. So now you can go into that custom GPT and say, okay, I need this, this, and this, and it gives you what you need. So all of that allows you to become certified, so that then you can say, this is how it's done appropriately and how to do it strategically, so I can measure it.
Yeah, one of the things I love about the PESO model, and this is mid down the list, it's not the most important thing, but I think it is important, is that it gives professionals on the client side, the agency side, anybody who's doing the work, a common language and a framework to understand what we're doing. I'm one of those people who doesn't believe that PR professionals should be licensed. That's a whole rabbit hole we don't want to go down. But the flip side of that is anybody can call themselves a professional at what we do. And that creates a situation where there isn't a common language and a common framework. Now, PRSA and a lot of other organizations have worked hard to create that. What I love about the PESO model and the certification is it distills that in a way that really does create this common argot, if you will, so that people can say, oh, well, I know what paid is, and I know what the flavors of paid are, although I know those are changing all the time.
Right.
If you look at your original PESO model, Ginny, and what's in it now, I'm thinking of the graphic, which is what, by the way, that's what most people know about PESO.
Yeah.
Is the spin sucks graphic, which we don't have to go down a rabbit hole here, but far too many people have tried to use and abuse that intellectual capital. But I do like looking at, where it was 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
Today to see, here are examples of paid, or here are examples of shared, and it's grown over time, right?
It has. Yeah. So we launched it when I wrote Spin Sucks the book, it was launched in that. So that was 2014. And then
Wow.
we iterated over the years. In 2020, when we launched the certification, we refreshed the graphic and redid everything. And then earlier this year, 2024, we refreshed it again. And like I said, we'll have to do another refresh in 2025. Just because so much has changed. And, earned media by itself has changed so drastically that it's going to be refreshed from that perspective too. But yeah, it was very much, when we launched it, it was very much just a list of tactics that
Right.
fell underneath each media type. And today it's a much more strategic overview of how to measure the outcomes of what we do.
I think I saw you say somewhere one time that it was almost accidental.
It was.
Beginning.
It was accidental.
Well, great ideas can come from
Right. Right.
thoughts like that, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
Jenny, what brings you the most satisfaction and enjoyment in your work?
Oh man. I really love doing the work. And one of the things that my team has really pushed me on over the years is, you should really be spending your time doing business development and all the things that I would tell a business owner too. You'd be spending your time doing business development, spending strategic time with CEOs, blah, blah, blah. And I do those things, but I really love to do the work. And so there's certain things I'm just not going to give up. And they say, someone else can write your podcast script. And for me, that's like taking away my right arm. Like, I don't want to give that up. And so that stuff still brings me a ton of joy. I love looking at things like I'm not sure how I feel about TikTok just from a macro level because of who owns it, but
I feel the same way.
I love looking at it and understanding like this is what's happening in the world and this is where people are getting their information, right or wrong, and how do we capitalize on those things.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know you folks at your firm, you've worked with a lot of experts, right? And help them with their PR. Well, I mean, Ginny, you're an expert. People want to know what you think. So I don't know if I'm going to make your team unhappy, but people want to know what you think. So there's certain things that as a leader you do that you enjoy doing that. I mean, I will speak personally, but I'm fairly confident I'm not speaking just for myself. We want you to keep doing.
Well, thank you.
I
I
know.
will quote you on that.
And one of the things, of course, is AI. We want to know what you think about that. And I like your thoughts on that. Now, and why don't we almost end there? We're almost to the end of the episode, but give our audience a brief sense of what your thinking is on AI. Right now, I've done a talk a couple of times for Vistage. I'm a Vistage speaker. We've talked about this previously, and I've done one on AI and marketing because there are some people who think, "Oh, what do we need marketing people for? PR people
Right.
for?
Yep.
AI can do everything."
Yep.
Your thoughts?
No, we can't. I mean, I love it. I use it every day. I
Me
use
too.
ChatGPT and Claude
Yep.
almost every single day, like it one way or another. But if you use it, you understand its limitations. And it's great for outlines, it's great for ideas, it's great for helping you kind of get something onto a piece of paper, but it is not the end. And I think that's what we're going to, I liken this to a couple of things. Like back in the day when websites were launched, everybody grabbed keywords and they just stuffed their website copy full of keywords so they would rank in Google. Back in the day, everyone was like, oh, this social media thing's just for kids. So I'm just gonna, so we've evolved from that. We've evolved from scraping content from other websites and posting it on our own, which is theft, but we still did it. We've evolved from that. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI, where people are saying, oh, yeah, I don't need marketing or communications anymore. And then when they start using AI to pump out their stuff, they're going to realize they look and sound like everybody else. They're missing their capital S story. They're missing their expertise and their authority. And because of that, they're going to come back and go, okay, we were wrong. So we're going to evolve. It's not the end all be all, but it is definitely a helper and it definitely makes you more efficient.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important for the people we work with, people who are professionals in our field, and especially those who are a little bit younger, just because they don't have as much time in the trenches as we do. Not that they're not as smart or smarter than we are, and also especially for the people who use our services to understand just what you said. I follow Christopher Penn, and I know that you do as well, and you guys are friends. And I think one time that he described the current state of generative AI is like, it has the ability to go to the refrigerator being the internet, and rehash
Right.
the leftovers, right?
Right.
But when it comes to what we've been talking about in this episode, creative ideas and thinking, just reworking the leftovers to feed your kids is not the same as creating something new and
Right.
different
Right.
and better than what you had before, right?
Right.
No disrespect to people who use AI, and I know there are apps out there to like take a picture of your refrigerator and tell me what I should make for lunch. Right? I know that I have a friend who does that, but
That's very funny.
yeah, I guess it works, right? When you can't think anymore at the end of a long day.
Sure. Yeah.
That's kind of where we are right now. We're not really at a point where AI can replace us. AI is a great tool, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Any industry, any profession, lawyers, accountants, take your pick. Stuff that can be mundane and square one, it can really help.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yep.
Ginny, is there anything else before we wrap up here that I didn't ask you about that you wished we talked about?
No, I think we covered a lot during our time together.
We did, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Ginny, how can people best reach you?
I know this is going to come as a surprise, but spinsucks.com.
There you go. I was thinking about recording the episode today, and I said to myself, I know one thing that Jenny's going to say for sure. Reach me at spinsucks.com. So don't forget that, folks. The easiest place to find Jenny.
Easy peasy.
That's right. Jenny, it's been a great pleasure to have you on this episode of Spin Sucks. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you, folks, as always, for listening to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why someone would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. Your capital S story. We'll see you next time.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on Impian to help your business? Mike Carlin hosts a great podcast called Uncorking a Story. Mike, tell us what these fine folks will get when they listen.
Uncorking a Story profiles successful writers and authors to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. And it all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin?
Ooh, interesting. Where can people subscribe?
You can follow the show at uncorkingstory.com, at marketingpodcast.net, or by searching for Uncorking a Story wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard him. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.